What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Titans Rundown. I am your host, Micah McCamey, and in the last episode, we talked about my NFL mock draft, what I would want to do if I was Rand Carthen, and we also talked about Logan Ryan's retirement, and we thanked him for what he did for the Titans organization. And we also talked about that iconic interception that he made against the Patriots in the wild card round in 2020. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 5 biggest needs that I believe are present for this year's draft. Now, there is a couple of positions on here that I don't even have in the mock that I have put down just because, I feel like I kind of forgot about them last week. So, that is just a disclaimer. And anyway, let's get into today's episode. But before we do that, I've got to make an announcement. Next Thursday, April 25th, I will be going live for the NFL draft, or at least for the first round. I'm not going to do day 2 or day 3. I'm going to go live for the first round, and I am going to watch with y'all as the Titans select a player. We don't know who it is yet, but y'all just, be aware of that because this is something that I'm very excited to do. To be able to react instantly with you guys and be able to just see everybody's reaction. So I just wanted to put that out there. But anyway, now we're starting the episode for real. We gotta talk about Treylon Burks before we get to the top 5 needs, though. Was it just me, or like whenever you look at his face, did he look a little out of shape? Now, I know that a lot of people will be trying to make the case for him, like, oh yeah, all players are out of shape before the season, though. Which, is true, but whenever you think about the fact that he hasn't really ended up being that mature, it wouldn't shock you if he just did this out of immaturity and, got big during the off season. So, I'm honestly kind of upset about it, if I'm being honest, because I was a part of the camp that genuinely thought that if Treylon did get the right opportunity at slot receiver, that I think that he could genuinely have been decent. But him showing up out of shape, combined with the fact that Rand Carthen, Brian Callahan, Nick Holtz, actually, Rand Carthen didn't say anything about him, just ignore that. But everybody in the building, offensive-mindedly at least, barely mentioned Treylon. And he's going to have to earn his opportunities now, according to offensive coordinator Nick Holtz. So, obviously, judging by that, it's not looking too good for Treylon. But I do need to bring up a story of encouragement to people that still don't believe in Treylon and people who still do believe in Treylon. I remember, it was a few months ago, Jalen Green may have been one of the worst picks, is what it looked like. And he was on the bench. His head coach wasn't giving him leniency, wasn't like giving him playing time just because he was a high draft pick. He was like, can you play or can you not? And Jalen Green ended up balling out and now looks like he could be a part of the Houston Rockets franchise. So, with that, I say that what if Brian Callahan is what Treylon needs to finally put in some work? Like, what if having Brian Callahan in the building telling him, look, you got to earn your reps, helps his work ethic? I'm not too sure if it will, but I do think that there is a good chance of that. So, anybody that wants to criticize him, that's completely fine, but don't count him out yet unless he gets traded, because that could still happen. Like, we could still, get like a third or something out of him. Obviously, that's not going to happen because I think that's even too high of a price. But like, we may end up going for like a sixth or something like that to go get rid of Treylon. But who knows? we just got to see how it all plays out going into next season. All right. So don't give up on Treylon just yet. And just stay hopeful. Be a little optimistic about it. Because obviously I am a glass half full kind of guy. So obviously I'm going to look at this from a positive perspective, try and find a way. Okay, how can I make this positive? There are some situations where I'm just like, there's no way that it can be positive. So this is one of those situations where I think there is a positive, though. So just keep it in mind that Treylon can still be okay. So now we move on to the main topic of today's episode. My top 5 needs to address in the NFL draft. Now, there is a little bit of controversy on this list, specifically with the first one that I do mention, but I want to let this be known. I thought about this. I actually just kind of knew that all 5 of these positions were positions of need, but I am ranking them on how much I'm doing 2 factors: how much value their position brings to the team, and how good the class is. And then there's also a third one that I forgot about, and that is how much of a need it actually is. All right. So now we go into today's episode. But first, I know I'm delaying this video, but trust me, this one has to do with it. It's an honorable mention. Okay. This is the honorable mention. And my honorable mention, I know I said that 4 times, is kicker. I know that a lot of people are going to be upset with me about this. Peanut Gallery is just going to be like, well, what about Nick Folk? Nick Folk is great. He was one of the best kickers in the NFL last year. Yes, I agree with you. That is 100% true. He's a very good kicker, very consistent, very efficient, very just a good player overall. But there's a problem with that. Nick Folk is 39 years old. How much longer do we think we're going to have him around? So, my thought process is, if we can go get him, if we can go get him somebody that he can mentor, he's obviously not going to be replaced immediately. We're probably going to put this kicker on the practice squad. But just so that way, we'll have someone for the future. Because that is also a consistent thing throughout this, is that since our kicker is old right now, that means that it's a very bad idea to go into the future without complete uncertainty about what's going to be happening. So now we move on to the actual top 5. My apologies for holding this back for as much as I did, but here we go. Number 5, defensive tackle. Now, the only reason that this is on this list is because it is a big need. At least someone to pair it with Sebastian Joseph Day. Because obviously, him being the only one in the nose tackle position is not helpful. Especially since we have him only on a 1-year deal, and he's probably going to leave for free agency after this year. So, my opinion is that even though this is a big position of need, it is nowhere near the most valuable position on this list. It's one of the least valuable positions in the NFL. Now, obviously, there's going to be nose tackles that break the mold in sorts of ways, like those nose tackles that are just so good that they make it to where if we got this dude, he could elevate our offense. But it's not like that there are hundreds of those guys. It's obvious that you can put someone in a system, and if you have a decent enough defensive line around them, they're going to do fine. They're not going to be a liability. They're not going to cost you a game. So, obviously, like I said, this is a very big position of need. With Teair Tart gone, with us not getting anyone in free agency, that means that we need to go after somebody that can do decent. All right? So, that's my number 5, defensive tackle. Now we move on to number 4. Also, sorry if this video is a little shorter than usual. I'm not too sure if it's going to be that short, especially considering that 2 and 1 are going to have a lot of talking. So, my apologies if it is. But anyway, number 4, we have linebacker. Again, another position that if you have a good enough linebacker, he's not going to cost you games. He's actually probably going to help out the defense a little bit. Like Azeez Al-Shaair, I did love him to death until he went to the Texans. But he is a okay inside linebacker. I know that Titans fans and Texans fans alike will come at me and think that I'm ridiculous for saying that, or, oh, you're just biased because he went to the Texans. No, he is a okay linebacker who is in a good defensive scheme. As much as I think that it was time to move on from Vrabel, I can't just deny that he had a decent defensive scheme. So, Azeez Al-Shaair is, an above-average linebacker who did good for us and was in the right position to succeed. So, this means that if we can get someone that is about as good as Al-Shaair or someone that we can develop into an Al-Shaair, that will be completely fine. I mean, like, if we use whoever a linebacker is correctly, then it won't be a problem. We need a coverage linebacker, though, all right? Because we have Kenneth Murray, but I don't think we're going to use him as an inside linebacker. I think he's going to go more into the edge area, So, that's just my opinion on that. But also, the Titans cannot afford to have Otis Reese starting. Now, I love Otis Reese, all right? I don't want that to cloud over that thought, because Otis Reese, he's a decent player. He's a good role player, is probably your backup. Like, if he goes in, I'm not going to be like, if like a Will Levis or a Calvin Ridley went down and I'm just like, oh gosh, I'm not going to be like just absolutely upset or absolutely angry about the fact that a linebacker goes down and Otis Reese has to play. But that doesn't mean that he is a starter. Like, he is not good enough unless he had some insane breakout, gets a lot of muscle. He's just not good enough to be a starter. And I hate to say that because he is a fun player. But y'all get the point at this point. I've rambled about it. I've said this before. I said this in one of my mock draft videos. I'm not too sure if it was the latest one or the one before that. But overall, we need an inside linebacker, and we need someone that can complement Otis Reese that can complement Kenneth Gainwell pretty well. Anyway, moving on to number 3. We have the safety. Now, this one was a little tough. I didn't know if I was going to put linebacker at 4 and then safety at 3, or if I was going to put safety at 4 and linebacker at 3. So I just came down to the idea of which one is more important, because I think they're both equally as big of positions of need, but I think that the separating factor is that safety is a more important position in the NFL than a linebacker. Now, obviously, the linebacker is plug and play, and so is the safety. The safety is also not that important, but it is a dire position of need, and it's more important than the linebacker. So that's why I put it at number 3. Yeah, Amani Hooker is a very good safety. I don't want anyone to think that I am dissing on Amani Hooker. And I'm not completely disrespecting Elijah Molden either, because I think that he's a fine safety. It's just that I don't think that he is enough to help this secondary get to where it can be. because this secondary has potential to be top 5. I don't think y'all understand that. Like, with L'Jarius Sneed, Roger McCreary, Chidobe Awuzie, and Amani Hooker, if you get one more safety to get with that tandem, that's one of the best secondaries in the entire NFL. All right, and I know there's going to be some salty Colts fan that's just going to be like, they ain't even top 10. I try to ignore those dudes because most Colts fans, no offense to the ones that do, because I know y'all exist out there, but most Colts fans have no clue what they're talking about. So, I'm just the messenger here, all right? Can't shoot the messenger. So, yeah, safety is obviously a big need, and it can help us get to an even better place than we are right now. Now, I didn't have that much to say about that one, but we move on to number 2. And obviously, this was the debate of this entire thing right here. Which one is a bigger need between wide receiver and left tackle? At number 2, I have wide receiver. Now, I know that a lot of people are just going to be like, nah, man, wide receiver's number 1, obviously. But here's my problem with that. We still have 1 more year of D-Hop. We have 4 more years of Calvin Ridley. So, the problem with that is how we're going to have at least 1 more year for the wide receiver core right now to do its thing, do pretty decent, and then next year we can concentrate our forces on going to get a wide receiver, hopefully later in the first round, unless Will Levis just completely flops, which is still obviously a possibility. I mean, we've seen it within the division. Davis Mills was horrible after a shining, promising first year. So, wide receiver, I don't even think, I only put it at number 2 because it's more important than the other 4, first off, and the fact that it's also a very old position group, at least compared to the rest of the team. So, obviously this one didn't have that much competition, and I'll be honest, if we had worse positions, like if we had a worse tight end, if we had a worse guard, if we had a worse defensive end, I would 100% tell you that those are the bigger needs compared to wide receiver. But that's just my opinion, and I know that a lot of people disagree on it. So, who would I want to draft at wide receiver? I would go with either Malik Nabers or Rome Odunze. And I think that I would probably be fine with Rome. I would be ecstatic about Nabers, but obviously Nabers, there's a very big likelihood that he's not there at 7. And obviously we're not going to trade up. If Grant Carthen does that, I am going to lose my mind if it's not for Joe Alt. But it's just my 2 cents. So, yep, wide receiver, number 2. All right, number 1, obviously, it's left tackle. But even though we couldn't talk about it, and this would be completely fine, I think that we just do need to go ahead and talk about this position because it's quite obvious. Like, we have Jalen Duncan as a left tackle right now, or Nicholas Petit-Frere. Either way, it's pretty bad. Like, if we have Petit-Frere or Jalen Duncan starting at left tackle this year, we will not be able to tell if Will Levis is the guy or not. And that is my ultimate problem with this. And I saw people on Twitter that were, yapping about how, since we traded for this dude, Leroy Watson, that means that we have covered left tackle and we're going after wide receiver now. Okay, I need to clarify, and I need to inform the unknown. Leroy Watson is not a left tackle. He's a right tackle. And that was what that was meant to be. And also, that's super dumb. Very dumb. Because of the fact that, even though I think they could end up starting at right tackle, that's just honestly even ball game for like 3 dudes. So like there is a chance that he just ends up being a depth piece, and that's the only reason that we even traded for him. So just wanted to clarify that for anyone that was uninformed. Leroy Watson is probably not going to start next year. So now we also talk about this. We have a great left tackle class on our hands right now. And if you want to, maybe you could put like a / right tackle. But even then, like I still think that if we had a good enough left side of the O-line, it could elevate the other side of the O-line to help give even more protection for Levis. So my opinion is that if we don't draft a left tackle, like I said earlier, we won't know what Will Levis is because he won't have time in the pocket. He'll have to be scrambling all around. So that is my opinion on left tackle and why it's the biggest draft need. But also, who would I draft at left tackle? Who do you think I'd draft at left tackle? I would draft Joel 100 times out of 10. And, honestly, if you want to go after like a J.C. Latham or a Olu Fashanu, if you're going to do that, please trade down. I'm not the biggest fan of the idea of trading down, but if we ended up trading down and getting a Latham or an Olu, I would be completely fine with that. Or a Hufanga, was that his name? Anyway, yeah, obviously left tackle was going to be number 1. It's what I have in the majority of my mock drafts, and it is what I want most going into this draft. So, that wraps up today's video, or episode. I have Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and if you're listening over podcasting services, I also have YouTube. And, I think y'all need to, come over and follow me on Twitter because that's where I'm most active. That's where I have the most fun scrolling through, seeing like Titans fans because the fan base on Twitter is so much stronger than it is on Instagram. So, if y'all want to drop by, drop a follow, see what I think about the Titans situations and see what I think about who is the best option for anything, just drop by Twitter, all right? I also have Instagram. I am as active on there, but, I'm not like, I'm not into it, honestly. I just usually take what I take from Twitter or X, copy and paste it over to Instagram, so just trust me. My Twitter is a lot more fun. And also, I have TikTok. Yo, TikTok for me has been dead. Like, I haven't gotten anything on that. So, please, unless you're talking about my last video, which had big time viewership for me at least, but please, I need y'all to go over and support that because honestly, I'm losing my touch on TikTok right now, man. But anyway, that's going to do it all for me. This has been a rundown of your Tennessee Titans draft. I love y'all, and tighten up.